Greetings, my name is Slight, and this is going to be a unstructured video on how to become a competitive gamer. I'm going to take you through some of my experiences and some of my thoughts on how this process works. I used to be a semi-competitive, maybe mid-high skill Dota player 10 years ago or something. My MMR was in the top 0.5% of players in Dota 2, and I was probably better in Dota 1 than I was in Dota 2, because by the time Dota 2 came around, I kind of quit being competitive. But I have thought for maybe the last 10 years on, what went into my failure. And I would call it a failure, based on the expectations I had at the time. What went into my failure and what I would have done different. And, the first thing I'd like to make a point about is why should you listen to someone who's not a competitive player? Why should you listen to a mid-skill player on how to become a competitive player? That's a really good question. Let's hit that topic first. Okay, in front of you, you're looking at a short story, or an essay rather, by David Foster Wallace, an incredible literary mind. And this essay is about a memoir by one of the best tennis players ever. All right. This tennis player is Tracy Austin, and I don't know too much about tennis, but this is a really, really interesting read. But basically, she was someone who was beating pro athletes at the age of 14, right? So someone who's incredible. Here's an excerpt. I was about the same age and played competitive tennis in the same junior ranks as Tracy Austin, half a country away and several plateaus below her. When we all heard in 1977 that a California girl who'd just turned 14 had won a professional tournament in Portland, we weren't so much jealous as agog, which means stunned. None of us could come close to testing even a top 18-year-old, much less a pro-caliber adult. So we started to hunt her up in tennis magazines, search out her matches on obscure cable channels. She was about 4'6" and 85 pounds. She hit the hell out of the ball and never missed and never choked and had braces and pigtails that swung wildly around as she handed pros their asses. She was the first real child star in women's tennis, and in the late 70s she was prodigious, beautiful, and inspiring. There was an incongruously adult genius about her game, all the more radiant for her little girl giggle and silly hair. I remember meditating, with all the intensity a 15-year-old can summon, on the differences that kept this girl and me on our respective sides of the TV screen. She was a genius, and I was not. How must it have felt? I had some serious questions to ask her. I wanted very much her side of it. But what David Foster Wallace finds as he reads Beyond Center Court, on Austin's, memoir or autobiography here, is she says stuff like this. Tracy Austin on the psychic rigors of pro competition. Every professional athlete has to be so fine-tuned mentally. Tracy Austin on her parents. My mother and father never, ever pushed me. Tracy Austin on Martina, must have been some competitor. She is a wonderful person, very sensitive and very caring. Actually, I don't know who that is. On Billie Jean King. She is so incredibly charming and accommodating. All right, you get the point, right? These are some of those key points that we'd be interested in learning about from these exceptional competitors, but also the information that's provided here. The actual, and let's imagine these are the actual thoughts of this player, are very washed out. There's not a lot of detail here. All right, and so this all leads me to a point, I'm going to let David Foster Wallace make it. All right, so I'm right here, starting at all right. On the bottom left of the screen. And I do strongly recommend, if you had a good command of the English language, to give this whole thing a read. It's not too long, and it's very, very good. All right, so the obvious point. Great athletes usually turn out to be stunningly inarticulate about just those qualities and experiences that constitute our fascination with them. For me, though, the important question is why this is always so bitterly disappointing, and why I keep buying these sports memoirs with the expectations that my own experience with the genre should long ago have modified, and why I nearly always feel thwarted and pissed when I finish them. One short answer, of course, is that the commercial autobiographies like these promise something they cannot deliver: personal and verbal access to an intrinsically public and performative kind of genius. Let me read that again. The thing they can't deliver is personal and verbal access to an intrinsically public and performative genius. All right, there's a distinction being made here that the actual genius that's occurred here is public and performative, not verbal and personal. right? The problem with this answer is that I and the rest of the US book market aren't that stupid. If Impossible Promises were all there was to it, we'd catch on after a while, so it would stop being profitable for publishers to churn out these memoirs. Maybe what keeps us buying in the face of constant disappointment is some kind of deep compulsion to both experience genius in the concrete and to universalize genius in the abstract. For my part, though, I think there's something deeper and scarier that keeps my hope one step ahead of past experiences as I make my way to the bookstore's register. It remains hard for me to reconcile the silliness of Austen's narrative mind, on the one hand, with the extraordinary mental powers that are required by world-class tennis players on the other. Anyone who buys the idea that great athletes are dim should have a close look at an NFL playbook, or a basketball coach's diagram of a 3-2 zone trap, or an archival film of Miss Tracy Austen repeatedly putting a ball in the court's corner at high speed from 78 feet away, with huge sums of money at stake and enormous crowds of people. In my own comparatively low-level junior matches, before audiences that rarely hit 3 digits, it used to be all that I could do to manage my sphincter, which I think is his booty. I would drive myself crazy, but what if I double fault here and go down a break with all these folks watching? Don't think about it. Yeah, but except if I'm consciously not thinking about it, then doesn't part of me have to think about it in order for me to remember what I'm not supposed to think about it? Shut up! Quit thinking about it and serve the goddamn ball. Except, how can I even be talking to myself about not thinking, unless I'm still aware of what it is I'm talking about and not thinking about, and so on and so on. He gets divided up and paralyzed, and most ungreat athletes do. They freeze up, they choke, they lose their focus, they become self-conscious. They cease to be wholly present in our wills and choices and movements. And this is the point I'm trying to make here with this, all right? So if you've stuck here, this is the point, all right? This focus is the point. It's not an accident that great athletes are often called naturals, because they can, in performance, be totally present. They can proceed on instinct and muscle memory and autonomic will, such that agent and action are one. There's no thinking that's getting in the way of action. Great athletes can do this even, and for the truly great ones like Borg, Bird, Nicholas, Jordan, and Austen especially, under wilting pressure and scrutiny, they can withstand forces of distraction that would break a mind prone to self-conscious fear. They can break that in two. The real secret behind top athletes' genius, then, may be as esoteric and obvious and dull and profound as silence itself. The real many-veiled answer to the question of just what goes through a great player's mind as he stands at the center of hostile crowd noises, and lines up the free throw that will decide the game might well be nothing at all. How can great athletes shut off the ego-like voice of the self? How can they bypass the head and simply and superbly act? How, at the crucial moment, can they invoke for themselves a cliche as trite as one ball at a time, or gotta concentrate here, and really mean it, and then really do it? Maybe it's because for top athletes, cliches present themselves not as trite, but simply as true, or perhaps not even as declarative expressions with qualities like depth or triteness or falsehood or truth, but simply as imperatives that are either useful or not, and if they are useful, to be invoked and obeyed, and that's all there is to it. What if, when Tracy Austen writes that after her 1989 car crash, I quickly accepted there was nothing I could do about it? The statement is not only true, but exhaustively descriptive of the entire acceptance process that she went through. Is someone stupid or shallow because she can say to herself that there's nothing she can do about something bad, and so she'd better fucking accept it? And thereupon simply accept it with no more interior struggle. Literally none. That's it. She's accepted it. That was it. Or is that person maybe somehow, natively wise and profound, enlightened in some childlike way that some saints and monks are enlightened? This is, for David Foster Wallace, the real mystery, whether such a person is an idiot or a mystic or both or neither. And the only certainty seems to be that such a person does not produce a very good prose memoir. Right? Okay, and that's my point. Okay, I won't read the rest of it. But so why should you potentially listen to someone like me as opposed to, someone in whatever field that you want to listen to, who is that extremely good competitive player. It's because David Foster Wallace makes the case that the ability to explain why you're being competitive and maybe how to get there and what mentality it takes might be fundamentally separated from the ability to perform those things. Okay? All right? And I think he makes a good case for it. And if all sports memoirs are an example, then we have plenty of examples to go by. That's not to say that some people very rarely Venn diagram, where they have like this ability to speak and be personal and verbal, and to sort of explain what they're doing. We see this in Dota with like Owie 2000. Some of these support players who can actually like talk and like be present, like talk about the game in a way that's not like these imperatives that they've accepted, right? So should you listen to me? That's my case. All right, I'm better at explaining than I am at playing, but I can glean for you the thoughts and rigor that you may need to be successful at this. And so, without further ado, let's get into point number one. Point number one is relatively straightforward. Gain knowledge efficiently. People who are competitive players are experts, either in essentially the entire game, assuming the game is simple enough for one to contain all that knowledge, or they're experts in specific areas, right? A lot of my experience is Dota, so I'll probably rely on that experience the most. But in Dota is a game that you can't know everything, right? But you can be absolutely experts at a couple things, right? And maybe even 10 things. You can be like some of the most knowledgeable people in the whole game about those 5 or 10 things, right? Maybe it's heroes, maybe it's areas of the map, maybe it's how particular things happen in the game, maybe it's communication with the team. And like in Dota, if you're an expert in the game at like 5 things and you bring that to your team, well, when those 5 things occur, you know what to do, all right? And that makes your team much stronger because you have 5 things. So, gain knowledge efficiently. Your goal is to become an expert at, if the game's simple, the whole game, or a significant portion of the game. And being an expert at something means like, being in the top like 0.05% of having knowledge, all right? Knowledge that is accurate about a specific part of the game, which means that a lot of time needs to be spent on Wikipedia or on the wiki pages, really getting detailed with the information, all right? You really need to know exactly how stuff works, because otherwise you can't really leverage it. And this will all feed into point 3. So one of your main goals, especially early as you're playing, is to get to become exceptionally knowledgeable in some areas of the game. All right, beyond this type of thing, you need to cycle through 2 phases of knowledge gaining. Okay, one is a general knowledge gain, and then the other is this deep dive into becoming an expert in these targeted areas, right? And you need to flip-flop back and forth between these 2 things. I'll make the case that 20% of your time needs to be geared toward learning from in a general way, all right? So like, let's say you're playing Super Smash Bros, all right, Ultimate. 20% of your time you need to be playing off characters, all right? And I suggest that you spend like if it's 20% of the time and you play 10 days, 2 days, right? 20%, yeah, 2 days should be fully off characters, okay? And then the rest of it should be like honing down to become an expert at the thing that you're really good at. And it will take that much time, to become an expert at 3 or 4 things. You will have to spend most, like 80% of your time on those 3 or 4 things to get that good. But the reason we do this, and you see this with Grubby, if you check Grubby right now, it is January 15th, 2023. Grubby is learning to play Dota 2. And what we see with him is he goes through and plays the Dota A to Z, which means he plays every character in alphabetical order, all right? And then he will take a deep dive on characters that he's getting better with or he has an affinity with, all right? This is very indicative of what it takes to get good. And what I'll say is, at the beginning, if you're learning a new game, that this ratio is not 80 to 20 anymore. It's more like 50-50, right? Because you really need to get a big general basis for how the game plays out, how other characters sort of work, before you can't outplay a character if you don't know how it works, right? If you don't know some of its tricks, right? Um, and if we're talking about from team play, um, you know, if you have 5 players on a team, maybe 6 with a coach, um, if every person has like 4 to 7 things they're experts on, well, now that gets shared, right? And so if another player really knows how to play a character you don't know how to play with, well, you've just gained a huge amount of knowledge by playing against and with that person because they're on your team, because they'll share that knowledge with you. That they'll say like, okay, like these are the things that I can do, and these are the options you have against those things, right? But barring that, that's sort of later down the road. You need a basis, right? You need to like have played that character at least 1 or 2 times, to have any hope at outplaying it with the character you're an expert on. So early on, kind of 50-50 split between general versus deep dive knowledge. But as you get to where you're like, you have a pretty good grasp of the game, you're still 80-20, right? You still need to put 2 out of 10 days into at least, and maybe there's a case for even more time. All right, but I'm going to say 80-20 is a good way to go. This also gives you a break, like when I get frustrated, when I've been going down, a deep learning dive, right? Um, uh, Sometimes it's good to take a day off and just play characters I have no ego involved in as to like my performance on them, right? And that's something we'll talk about here in just a second. But uh, I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about here. Okay. All right. Next up is learning to communicate productively. This is gaining knowledge efficiently. I think is probably the most important thing. I think I don't think these are not rated from most important to least important. I just picked gain knowledge efficiently because I figured that that's something you could stomach before I talked about things you probably didn't like as much. But the truth is that if you're going to be a competitive player, you need to be a good communicator. I mean, you have to be, right? That doesn't mean you need to be like a super verbally skilled. Like I'm not going to try to tell you, Tracy Austin clearly doesn't have like extreme verbal prowess, but you need to be productive with your communication. All right, what does that mean? Why does that matter? Why would I ever tell you that? Well, to be the best or to be competitive, and that means you need to be the best at some things, right? Almost certainly. To be truly competitive, or at least close to the best, right? You need to play against the best players. All right, now how do you go about doing that? Okay, how do you go about getting in front of the best players in the game? Well, if you're gaining knowledge efficiently and you play for 3 years, and you're doing some of these other things that I'm suggesting, you may eventually just by sheer skill alone do that. But I would say that that's an efficient way to go about it. Realistically, you need to get involved in like the communities that these higher skill players are involved in, and find a way for you to fit in them, all right, in a productive way, even if your skill's not quite up to par, right? Whether that's purchasing coaching sessions, whether that's, which isn't an option for everyone, whether that's, and if you don't have that option, you should do that. Plus, even if you can, you should maybe purchase some coaching sessions. Plus, be a productive, community member in these areas. Be nice, be able to talk about the game in a way that's useful for people, especially if you're an expert in some areas. If people are talking about a particular area that stuff about, you can chime in and you can say like, oh, this for this, right? And that's productive. People remember that when you provide value with your communication, as opposed, most people don't do that. Most people don't provide value with their communication. They talk for themselves, right? And in this case, we are talking for ourselves, but we're also providing value. Okay. This is getting a little ungrounded, so let's see if I can pull this back. Okay, you need to play against the best players, and to do this, my claim is that you're going to need to sort of play this other game. All right, it's a totally different game than whatever competitive game you want to play, whatever athlete thing you want to do, and this other thing is a game of talking. All right, it's a game of sort of moving you socially into an advantageous position so that you can gain skill faster. All right. So some of these exampled outcomes would be to have a mid skill, like early on, have a mid skill player take you under their wing. All right. So if you can find someone who's been playing for 5 years, they're kind of competitive, but not really, and you're like a year in, having that player take you under their wing and kind of show you what they know is going to massively improve your ability to learn, massively improve the time it takes you to learn some things. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Wisdom will trump intelligence every time, because wisdom, all it takes is memory retrieval for me to know exactly what to do. Where intelligence, sure, if I'm 3 times more intelligent than someone, I can figure out things that they can't figure out. But guess what? When they know something, it still takes me time to figure it out, no matter how smart I am. Intuition is memory retrieval. Intuition is not an intelligence-oriented thing, okay? And if you want to fight me on that, go read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Intuition is memory retrieval. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. It just has to do with what you know. So people who know what to do are going to instantly be able to recognize situations and act upon them with their fast-thinking brain. And people who are really smart but don't know what to do are going to be one step behind, assuming they have an extremely high IQ. And if they're not, then they're going to be five steps behind if they're of average IQ. So no matter what it is, wisdom will always trump it. So that means that people who know things, you should get cozy up with some of those people, and you should always keep your eyes looking forward for like the ideal candidate for which you should learn from. Just because you found someone now doesn't mean that you should stick with the same person and once you've kind of extracted all that you can get out of them, right? And it doesn't have to be transactional. It doesn't have to be a use case, but you can. This is all part of learning how to talk productively. You don't need to like tell that person who taught you for a year like oh, you suck now, like I'm gonna go do something else. It's like, it can be natural. It's like, it can be clear from the beginning that you're like, hey, I'm really trying to learn this game as fast as possible because I want to be a competitive player. That 5-year player may really know that. And once it gets to the point where like you need more, it's like, then the expectation's always been there, right? Be honest. If I could give you any advice in this learning to talk productively, is be truly honest about what you want without being rude, and really being thoughtful about your ego. You may think something's true, but really it's just like sort of self-serving. So the true thing is like, I want to be a competitive player, right? But the true thing is not I'm better than you, and I would prefer to be playing with someone else. Like that's not necessarily true. That's just ego talking, right? And so there's a distinction between these two statements. Another really important part about learning to talk productively is if you should really treat this as something like professional. Like your skills and professionalism will be invaluable to you if you can get to become a competitive player and also have some professional skills. You're going to be in a really, really advantageous position, because professional skills may seem like blah and boring, but really they're protection. All right. If the less people you piss off, the better suited you are to have the most options when things go bad for you. Imagine that I play with a player, and I flame him in a scrim, all right? And he never forgets that, especially if I was really rude, right? Like, especially if I was rude, right? And my ego was just on fire. Let's say my team disbands after a tournament, and that player is looking for a fifth. You think he's going to put you on his team? Like, that shit happens. Like, that happens, all right? And when you let your ego get in the way of your professionalism, you limit your options. And the more egotistical and the more you flame, and the less professional you are, the more limited options that you have. And I see this in the real world as well. It's no different. Never flame. Never. It's not an option. Seriously. I mean, if you want to be competitive, people who flame get there, but when you see people at the top level, do you see them ever flaming each other? There's a reason for that, all right? And it's because people who flame limit their options massively. So if you let yourself flame, if you have a hard time with flaming, like you need to quit. Like, it's that simple. Like, if you have any hope of doing this, like, you should never flame, ever. And it's the only way, all right? Criticism should be structured and planned ahead. Okay, this is with your team or with yourself. Okay, you should always perform criticism of play in the very same way. It's really nothing that should ever be brought up, in my opinion, during the game, unless there's a strategy even in this case, criticism doesn't need to be done. So let me give you one example. Let's say we're playing a team game, and our boss, our team leader, is suggesting we do a certain thing. Um, you know, you could, and you don't think that's what we should be doing, right? So you can do two things. One, you can be like, I don't think we should do that because of this, this, and this, and this, and it's like, okay, everybody's playing right now. How long are you gonna fucking talk, right? How much do you have to say, right? Because you need to keep it short and simple so we can move on and so we can play. So really, in that case, you don't have time to criticize, right? You have to just say like, I think we should do this, and then you see what everyone else says, and if people are like yes or no, and if it's mixed. If it's mixed, then hopefully you have the prescience to defer to your team leader, all right? Because otherwise, you're going to cause trouble. Um, uh, so it doesn't matter if you're right, okay, in that case. Really, what we need is a decision. A decision is often better than the best decision if coming to the best decision is going to make us lose, right? It's going to take too much time. And I see this in the real world as well. So criticism should be structured. And I'll suggest that criticism always happens after a game, never during a game. So that means if someone's doing something really dumb, like, that's okay. Just let it happen. See how it plays out. The truth is, this is the big thing. Like, you don't know. You could be wrong. Like, they could be actually doing something smart and you not realize it. And then you open your mouth and it's like, well, and then they have a good reason for doing it. And now you just created tension in a game that was going fine, right? And you gave into your own tension. You gave into your own ego thinking you know what's best. The truth is you have no fucking clue, right? Like, unless it's like one of these 4 things that you're an expert on, you probably don't even know. And even if it is one of these 4 things, then hopefully you have the presence of mind to know what it took to get there, and that it's really hard to learn all that stuff that you know, and that you can be a little bit more forgiving with people. So criticism should happen after the game. Okay, that way everyone can play their game, all right? And then you can see the results of what people have done. And then now we have the ability to leverage our knowledge. Because if you were right, okay, about the criticism you thought of during the game, then the effects of that criticism, the effects of that interaction should be plain in the outcome of the game, right? You should be able to pull up that replay and be like, hey, I saw you doing this early on, and I think that we really should be doing this. And like, you can see here, like, these decisions that you did led to this outcome, right? So like, I think this would be the better way to go. A, this is much less personal. B, it is when emotions are much more calm, right? Okay. So if it's a really hard loss, maybe like wait a day, okay? But still talk about it. Like, I mean, if you're a team, like, you're there to be productive. And if someone did something that you think is wrong, you do need to talk about it, right? Because the whole goal is like to be competitive. To be competitive, you have to like fail over and over again. You have to do the wrong things so that you can do the right things, right? But one of the biggest things is like, no matter who it is, even with yourself, like, wait till after the game to criticize yourself and get in this habit early, right? A, this gives you the opportunity to watch replays, which is one of the best ways to improve. But B, remember that criticism is a learning tool, which means it's just not useful for inside of the game. We're not learning inside of the game. We are acting. We are performing. We are a ripple. All right, that we are frozen in time. Right. This is like, if this is a ripple, right? Okay, so it's moving across the water. We're frozen in time. This is the knowledge that we have. Okay, this can't be changed. This can't move forward or back or whatever it's going to do. Really forward, right? Inside this game, this game is just a snapshot of our current understanding, and we're going to act upon it. And so recognizing this fact means that criticism shouldn't exist in the game. So whether you're criticizing your teammate or yourself, play out the game first, then go back and look at the game together. This way you can see how all the decisions played out, and you'll have a much easier time convincing people of the truth, because you'll be able to show them the outcome. And it's better to not tell them during the game, because then you really get you really get to show them the exact outcome of their decision. And then it becomes unequivocal. It's not something they can really fight against. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And they'll appreciate you not like jumping down their throat during the game. Okay. I have a real strong tendency to want to jump into number 5 right now, because I think it's just really, really similar. But just take a note that some of the things we've talked about, I think the great filter here is mentality. The thing that keeps you from being a competitive player is mentality. All right, and this fits in with learning how to talk productively. But let's move on to knowing your boundaries and limitations. Okay, so first things first. I'm going to make the case that you should like know some things about yourself. All right, because those are tools in your toolbox to have a sense of like kind of where you're at, right? Um, you want to know kind of how smart you are. You want to know like what your focus level is. You want to know like how good you are at communicating with people. And so I would strongly suggest that, get a little self-knowledge, all right? Because then you can operate on that self-knowledge, okay? One of the first things I would suggest is go to, where is this? Right here. Go to iqtest.dk. I think just put an IQ test space DK and do an IQ test. This is a good one that's online for free. And get a sense of what your IQ is. I'm not going to make the case that your IQ is like incredibly important, that like you have to know, like you have to be like genius level IQ, right, to become this. I don't think that's the case, in fact, I think that focus is more important than IQ, right? But if you're cruising at 100, right, this means something different for you. This means something for you, all right, as opposed to someone who's at 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, right? And I don't know if this test even goes that high, but this is a pretty reputable test. The ones you see on Facebook are trash here, but IQ test space DK. You should be able to get it. And just don't forget, you can right-click and translate to English in Chrome. And so you may need to do that because this is a Denmark test. So just keep that in mind. But it's a full visual IQ test, so your command of the English language is not useful. Now, I'm going to say something. If you're scared to take this test, you have no hope. Like, I'm going to be really honest with you. Like, if you can't stomach whatever this test spits out, and that like shuts you down, see ya. All right, you're done. All right, so if you can't man up, take this test and see whatever your number is, and I'm making the case that the number doesn't matter that much, right? Okay, whatever like mental ego shit you have around this number is going to stop you from doing it, then you're done. Okay, so this is like a test for some of you. All right. Your intelligence is only so important, and it's only so helpful, and it's IQ is a predictor of success. Okay, IQ is a correlated component with general success socially, in school, in the workforce. It's not a lot more than that. Okay. There's a really and not to get political, but there's a really good thing that Jordan Peterson does here on the hard truth of intelligence, IQ, and controversy. And I don't trust everything Jordan says, but he's I don't think he should be vilified either. I think he's definitely wrong about some stuff, but he obviously is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to stuff that he's spent his whole life working on. He has a huge amount of experience, and IQ is one of them, and psychometrics is definitely on the list. He sort of makes the case that IQ is IQ and personality basically are all the predictors that exist for deviation in outcomes of people's success and thought patterns and like stuff that can be measured, right? So, why am I suggesting you take this IQ test? Why am I telling you have to? That's what I am doing. You should go take this. You should also take a young typology test. Let me find that. Here we go. This one's pretty good. I'll put this link down below. This is humanmetrics.com/personality. This is a Carl Jung and the Myers typology approach to personality, which is Big Five. Gives you your 4-letter type formula according to their typology thing. Why are we doing this? Okay. Again, we need to know our own limitations, and it's extremely important. Okay, so let's talk about it now. I think I've given you the points, and if you're not going to take these tests, like seriously, stop the video, leave. Like it's not worth your time. Okay, don't waste. I don't make these just to talk. Okay, this is intended to hopefully provide value to some people who are actually trying to do this. Okay, so if you're not going to go do those things, like literally stop watching the video, go find something else to do. You clearly do not care enough, and I don't like to put that kind of imperative on stuff. But I think it matters. Like, I think you really need to know the gravity of the situation. If you're not willing to know your own boundaries, you're not ready. You're not ready. And this is what I would tell myself, because I wasn't ready. All right. These were the things that I struggled with. So if you cannot push past these things right now, I'm giving you the option. Pause the video. Go do both of these. It will take you an hour to do these. Okay? Do them back to back. The IQ test is hard. Okay? It starts off a little easier and gets hard. All right? It's not an easy test. Okay? Go find some limitations. Now, why do we want to know these? Let's say I score highly on an IQ test. This means certain things about me. Okay, it means that I probably learn faster than most people, which means that it may be slightly less important for me to find a good coach or a good mentor. But if I'm scoring kind of low on these, like 100, if I'm in the 80s, I don't know how much. Like if I was in 80, 85, that'd be an indication for me that I probably need to do something else. I'm not saying that you have to have a super high IQ, but I'm just being honest with you, okay? Right? You can disagree with me if you want, but the point of this is to provide value, and the value that surrounds this particular situation is that, like, if you're not, at least of average intelligence, the chance of you being successful in a competitive environment is not very high. You really need to be able to learn quickly. You need to be able to hold on to a lot of facts. You need to be able to hold on to maybe more variables. I think the range is like 5 to 9 variables, and I think intelligence is correlated with the amount of variables you can hold in your head. But the more variables you can hold in your head at one time, the more equipped you are to handle these complex situations where it requires variables. Now, like, athletes are different. Athletes can really focus on one thing at a time, and you can make the case that even in competitive games that's true. But I think in competitive gaming it's a little different, where like there's more variables that you're usually keeping in your head at once. And granted, those variables get reduced with wisdom, because now you don't have to maintain a calculation that you're working on, which is a variable, right? Or maybe even 2 or 3 variables. You can just know what to do, right? Because you have experienced it and you know the answer. So that reduces the amount of variables you have to hold. So maybe that's not the best thing, but if you're scoring pretty low on this, I'm not going to say don't do it. That would be my advice to myself. I would say, like, hey man, if you're scoring like an 85, if you're scoring like a 90, I would do something else, right? And the truth is that the average person who's looking to do this probably isn't that. You're probably in the 110 to a 120 range for competitive gamers, or higher, right? And that's the range of, like, in most universities. Like, it's rare in most nice universities. It's rare to find someone who's lower than 120 IQ, and it's not because people who are lower than that can't get there. It's because it's hard, and it's like, why would you want to? Like, the whole point of college is to build on, like, your ability to learn more, and to, like, get specialized knowledge, right? But, like, if you don't have that skill, like, that's okay. You don't need that skill. That's not the most important skill in the world. And it certainly isn't a predictor of necessarily, like, happiness at all. In fact, it's a predictor of depression and psychological disorders. So, take your lack of IQ points, put them into your happiness score, and skip along your merry way. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're somewhere on this range, right? If you're high on IQ, like maybe you're scoring 140, that's a concern. All right, just as much as scoring like 100 is, right? Because 100, you're on sort of the low end of IQ that's expected for competitive players, and that means we know our boundary, right? We need to, like, make up for this fact by, like, hey, we need to practice harder. We need to know more. We need better mentors. All right. We need to let someone else make the calls during the game, because that's our failure, right? We're not going to be able to do that calculation during the game, right? But we may be able to focus, all right? Maybe we can focus, and if we can do that right, remember, because focus is incredibly important in competition, right? Focus is more important than intelligence, right? So if we can do that, then we're fine, okay? Then we're golden, all right? But we need someone else to, like, in our Dota team, who can shot call, because that can't be us, and we need to know that. And we actually need to keep our mouth shut, right? And that's not because we're stupid, we're not. We're of average intelligence. It means that's not our strong point. But what we might be able to do is stay focused, all right? And if we can stay focused because we have less distractions, less thoughts, less complications, that even occur to us, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. If you're on the upper end of IQ, 150, 140, you're prone to neuroticism. You're prone to anxiety. You're prone to ADHD and psychological disorders. You're probably going to have a really hard time talking because you're going to get a big ego. If you're 150 IQ, that means that, 90 plus, more than 90% of people you talk to are so much less smart than you can tell. All right. Because usually you can, it takes to accurately assess whether someone's less intelligent. It's usually an IQ difference of 20 before you can really tell. That's what testing has shown. Is that if you're like within 10, you really can't accurately tell if they're smarter or less smart than you. But 20 you can, which means that it's a natural occurrence that you build an ego, especially because you're told your whole life through school that like intelligence is so important and you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart, right? That's going to be a huge problem. Huge problem. Like if you have a big ego, you're going to struggle a lot with this particular thing, knowing your boundaries and limitations. Having a super high IQ is not necessarily a good thing if you're trying to be a competitor. Look at David Foster Wallace. David Foster Wallace is one of the smartest people who's ever, he's incredibly intelligent, especially verbally. I mean, the way that he speaks and thinks and writes is unique. And if you get interested in him, he's got a lot of really good things to read. But he did commit suicide. I think sometime within the last 10 years. So, just as a warning before you go looking for him, he is no longer with us. And in my opinion, he's missed because he has a lot of interesting beliefs and thoughts that I think are sorely missed in the world today. It's a great example for this, though. Someone who really has that unique perspective, someone who is really smart, right? It gets hard to be in the world, right? Because you have few peers, okay? You have an inflated ego, and you're going to be challenged by that all the time. I know David Foster Wallace was, all right? That's a limitation. That's a boundary. Okay, so we've got more to talk about on this particular subject, so let's keep going. Competitive failure, especially early on, competitive players need to have an extremely high tolerance for failure, all right? Remember that playing a game, any given game, rarely actually matters whether you win or lose. Let that sink in, okay? Most games that you're going to play rarely matter whether you win or lose. What really matters is what are the boundaries that you understand, all right? What are the limitations you understand? How much knowledge did you gain, okay? That's actually the predictor of success, all right? How much are you extracting from each game? It's not about necessarily winning, okay? Winning matters at the tournament. Winning matters maybe at the scrim. Maybe sometimes a scrim matters because you need to gain respect of the enemy, all right? So that they know you're a good team, so they'll play you more, all right? Or an opponent who knows you'll play more, right? So you need to put your A game on, win those games, or try to, right? But for the most part, 90%, 95% of the games you will play do not matter whether you win or lose, okay? That is foundational. Let that sink in, okay? That is a huge mentality shift. That is a huge, huge important thing because if you're going to try to learn your boundaries, if you're going to try to learn your limitations, you need to be willing to push up against them, all right? And I struggle with this. Struggle is a strong word. It is. I was a very cheeky player in Dota, and I was always pushing my boundaries. And the problem is I pushed them even during competitive games, right? But for the most part, what I did was well received, especially by players who really knew what they were doing. Because you need to know exactly when you can get a kill, all right? By one hit, that last hit that you could have thrown is the kill, right? And you need to know that. So it means you need to develop this sense, this sixth sense of when that happens, all right? And it's an extremely aggressive feeling, all right? But it gets born out of pushing the boundaries of what you can do. Let me give you an example. Let's take StarCraft, all right? I want to play Zerg, all right? And I want to do a rush, and I've been practicing this rush over and over again. It's you cut a drone. You cut one extra resource gathering option so that you can create one more or two more aggressive units, and the risk is great there, right? Because you're really pushing the boundaries of what this thing can do, and you're probably going to lose that game, All right, maybe that was the wrong move. Like you lost, but you played like 10 games of this and you won only one time. All right, that is okay. All right, and this needs to happen in all games. All right, if you're going to be the best, you need to really have a strong sense of what that boundary is. It's like, okay, well, now I know I can't cut that resource gathering unit. Like I need that because after like the first attack, I was down 4 units, even though I had 2 more units at the start, and it wasn't worth it. It didn't make a big enough impact because they could do blah 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 blah. Right. So when you're going into any game, knowing your boundaries and limitations comes out of a strong sense of accepting failure. All right, going into games recognizing that this is an opportunity to learn, not an opportunity to win. Winning doesn't matter. Okay, winning is antithetical to most of the games you play. All right, meaning that it's not like it's actually a detriment if you're playing to win all the time. You should play to win sometimes. All right, and maybe 95% is not the right number. Maybe it's 80-20 again, where 80% of the time, you're just pushing your boundaries and limitations and learning and gaining knowledge, whereas 20% of the time you're playing to win in these like public matches or scrims, and maybe it's still more than that. Maybe it's 50-50, right? I don't know what it is, but you get my point, I think, and it is extremely important to recognize that distinction there. You have to practice this mental fortitude starting now. It takes extreme mental fortitude not to get tilted during a loss. And if you start now by viewing games as even a tournament game, that's when you put your A game on, right? That's when you try to win. I don't know why I'm moving this around. Even that can be looked at in the same way, and really it is, right? Losing a tournament match is not the end of the world. All right. Ultimately, if you're good and if you're committed, and you have the ability to keep playing, like a tournament match is no different than any other game. Right? You do put your game face on. You don't necessarily push your boundaries and limitations unless you have to, unless your back's up against the wall and you have to take big risks, right? But for the most part, it's just a continuation of the knowledge gain and understanding your boundaries and limitations. And that's the best way to look at it. The truth is you never arrive. Okay? The truth is you never become the best. There's always, especially in a game like Dota, you might hear a caster say, this guy's the best Tusk player ever. This guy is the best mid player ever. And it's like, okay, maybe that lasts for a season, maybe. And that's just a public opinion. But are you really the best? No one knows. Truth is no one knows, and there's no way to know for sure. But you were on the winning team of 2022 for the yearly tournament. And that's something you can take to the bank, literally. But you never, if you're chasing after becoming the best, you're going to lose, and that goes into the mentality as the great filter. So we'll skip that for right now. That being said, this sort of knowing your boundaries means that you have to accept failure and actually not play to win. You need to play for gaining knowledge, right? This is one of the reasons competitive players have such a high tolerance for losing, because they don't, if you're playing to gain knowledge as opposed to playing to win, you're going to be a lot more effective, and you're going to be used to failure, and it's going to be uninteresting to you, Imagine the force of will it takes to lose a competitive match on the main stage when you think you should have won. That takes extreme mental fortitude to not get tilted, and you should practice this now. And the last thing is, why do we want to know our boundaries and limitations? What's the benefit of doing this? And the benefit is very high, and it's that we can start playing to our strengths. If we know our boundaries, all right, if we know our personality is very high introversion, okay, that means that once again we're probably best to be quieter in games because we expend extra energy by talking, right? And so if we communicate, hey guys, I'm an introvert, like it's going to take energy if I have to like explain a lot of things and talk and like sort of navigate that social space during games. Then everyone can like kind of let you do your own thing and like just be like, hey, can you do this? Hey, is this okay? And like let you give your sort of one word no or yes kind of answers and stuff, and not have to like try to convince people in the middle of a game how something works. And if you didn't know that, if you didn't go take that IQ test and that personality test, you don't know that. You don't know the first thing about yourself, if you've never taken one of those. All right, and I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're perfectly indicative of exactly who you are, but they are a big step in the right direction toward knowing your own boundaries and limitations. And if we know our boundaries and limitations, we can start playing within them. And then we have a clear, undeniable space by which to interact with the world in-game and outside of the game. And starting from that position is one of the most effective things that you can do. All right, let's move on to point number 4. Get your social network on board. Okay. All right. So get your family on board if you can. All right. The better your support network is, the more likely you are to succeed. Communicate with your parents, your guardians, the people around you, that this is something that you're really trying to do, that it's something that's important to you, and it might take time, and there might be sacrifices that occur. All right. And that you're also taking it with a grain of salt. Like, it may not work out. The chance is it probably won't. Okay? All right? So if that's the case, how are you supposed to convince your mom that this is worth your time? All right? Or your dad, or your grandma, or your guardian, or even maybe yourself, right? That's a big one too. All right? How do you convince people that it's worth your time? All right? Now, I'll make the case that when you approach competitive gaming the way that I'm suggesting you do it, that all of this is totally laterally applicable to the real world. People who tell me that like gaming is not helpful should see my work reviews, because they are good, and it's all stuff that I learned from gaming, and it's all stuff I learned from my past failures as well. If you're like 16, 17 and you get some of these things pinned down, you're in a really good spot for the world at large, regardless of whether it's in competitive gaming. And some of the main benefits are knowing how to gain knowledge efficiently applies to every job you'll ever do. All right, becoming an expert in some things at a job is one of the best ways to ensure that you are useful and that you have job security, and that you're helpful to the people around you, and that you have a good working relationship. Learning to talk productively is like professionalism 101. Okay, if you can start learning to talk productively now in a game, you're going to do great in the workforce. People call that soft skills. I think that's literal horse shit. There's a great book called Thinking Fast and Slow by How to Win Friends and Influence People by what's his name? Carnegie? Something Carnegie? Anyway, great book. Love it. Very practical. And that book opens with the main predictor of salary in the most technical of jobs, engineering jobs, is communication skills. Let that sink in. Like, the highest and by far biggest predictor of salary, higher salary, is communication and not technical skill. Technical skill comprises 15% of people's salary up from the average, and the rest is communication skill. That is a huge statistic, and that's what that book opens with. All right, so learning to talk productively is super, super useful. So trying to get a support network online is not super difficult, but it should be done. Your chance of success is small, but your only hope of success is with your network on board with your goals. They need to know, and these skills are transferable. Okay, and that's something to keep in mind. Okay. All right, now let's go to the big one. I think that was a pretty short and sweet one. I don't think there's anything else I have to say there. Yeah. Okay. Mentality is the great filter. It really is. The great filter, if you don't know, is like this idea that civilizations will never move past this particular filter that always occurs in like galactic civilizations, and they end up like destroying themselves, right? Mentality is that for any competitive player. If I could go back and work on one thing, it would be my mentality. My mentality was extremely underdeveloped when I was a competitive player, and the people who play with me absolutely can attest to this. I was neurotic. I was easy to get upset. I would fight with people about stupid things. I took things personally. All this stuff is an outcome of mentality. All right, and mentality fits in with everything that we've done so far. Like, our mentality is going to be supported by a support network. Our mentality is going to be more clearly defined if we know our boundaries and limitations. Our mentality is going to be supported by players who appreciate us if we talk productively with them. All right, my mentality is going to be good if I know that what my goals are in gaining knowledge, right? All that adds up to this. But if you have a weak underdeveloped mentality, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. Underdeveloped, meaning that you have not spent time working on it. Okay? That's what it means. Underdeveloped. I have not worked on it. Okay? I have more to say. Just really letting that sink in. If you have a weak underdeveloped mentality, meaning you have not specifically actively worked on it, meaning writing down shit on a piece of paper, okay? Like work on it, okay? Work on it. Otherwise you're done. Work on it. Actively. You can't just be like, "Oh yeah, I'll get better at that over time." You're dumb. You're deluding yourself. You need to actively work on it. You need to go read shit. You need to go look stuff up about what it means to have a good mentality, all right? What it means to have a productive mentality. You need some ideas. Guess what? Your ideas are not good enough, all right? And they're not, and maybe they are. Maybe you have a really good support network. Maybe your dad or mom is like really good at this already. That's like a very small proportion of people, okay? So for the most part, that's not going to work for you. I want you to assume it's not true for your mom and dad because really all you'll do is look for some good mentality information and it'll confirm something you already knew. Boom. Confirmation, let's go. Okay, that's in the case that you already have it. Most people don't have it. I certainly didn't. This means you have to work on your thoughts. The thoughts that you have can be controlled to a certain extent. You may not be able to control the first reactive thought you have, but you can control how you act upon that thought and how you regard that thought. Okay? So someone feeds on my team, right? I may be, what an idiot. Oh my gosh, immediately, right? Okay. I can't really control that. I can, but that's a lot harder to control. That's hard, but I can control what I do and how I regard that. And if I don't say anything, that's good. All right. But the bigger thing is like, how do I internalize that? How do I deal with that emotion that I felt right there? And like, I might have to think of something like, it's not going to help if I say anything, and then I can move on. Right. And I know that. All right. These are these imperatives that Tracy Austin lives by. I can't change that. I can't do anything about that. That person's feeding. I can't do anything about that. And now look at that. It's off my mind. I'm literally just staying focused on what I can do every game. All right? Mentality. As a suggestion, maybe put some time into creating the Watcher. No, let's not do it. Maybe you should do this to some extent. This will only benefit the rest of your life. The Watcher is a mental construct that watches the thoughts that you have and evaluates their usefulness. I'll say that most people go their whole life without ever having the Watcher. The Watcher is a second layer to consciousness, and it can be built. Eckhart Tolle talks about it in The Power of Now. It is you. The way you do this is you stay very focused and present in any moment, and you really think about the thoughts that you're having. Especially if something's eliciting an emotional response, it is very often the case that the world up to this point has built within you the belief that any thought that you have can't be controlled, and that you're the biggest thing it does is it gives you have the illusion that you are in control of your thoughts, which is absolutely incorrect. It could not be further from the truth. The only control you have is something like the Watcher, in which you evaluate, and this is how you change your thoughts over time. What you do is you pay attention in a moment and think and watch the thoughts you're having. Watch the thoughts that come to you, all right? I hate the stupid, like sitting on the beach, letting the waves roll in thing. Worthless, all right? That's like that classic meditation thing. You don't need any of that, okay? Like just sit there and like, especially when like I have a trigger in my head. If I'm feeling an emotion, I think, what am I thinking? Like I've built that in. That's the Watcher for me. Like if I have an emotion, especially if I'm alone, I think about why I'm thinking that way. Why am I feeling that way? What are the thoughts that are occurring? And then I work through them, all right? And now you're going to find, especially if you're young, that you don't have the answers to those questions, and that's going to be big and scary, and you're not going to think about those things because it hurts. It really does. It's suffering, right? A lot of the thoughts that you suppress are the ones that cause you suffering. You can't just be in perpetual suffering. But the reality is you need to start unwinding those, right? Especially if you're someone who grew up with some trauma, that's going to get in the way of you becoming competitive, because those thoughts eat at your RAM of your head. You're always putting in 10% of your RAM toward like suppressing and managing thoughts that would otherwise cause you to suffer if they ever materialized into consciousness fully. So sit down, especially when you're in a tumultuous situation. Get away and think about the thoughts you're having, and think, why am I thinking that? Like, what's another way to think about this? How can I think differently about that? Why am I thinking that thing? I don't have to think that thing, right? I don't have to feel that way. Is that true? That's the real one. Is that thought that I had true? And just keep doing that over and 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 over again, and it will become automatic. And then you'll find that a lot of thoughts that caused you to react will get swept away, because you already have watched them enough that there's this sort of thing that happens in your brain where this thought that you already know occurs, like, oh, this guy's an idiot, all right? But then it's sort of countered by the thoughts you've worked through by watching that thought, which is like, I don't really know anything about this guy. Maybe he's not an idiot. Let's see how it plays out. Or if he is an idiot, it's like, what can I do about that? I can just play my own game. So it's like this thought occurs and it just gets turned off. And I don't even have to do anything. Once again, wisdom comes into play. The watcher turns into an automated process over time. When I spent about a year of my life just basically doing the watcher, and I worked kind of 2 dead-end jobs and saved some money up, and just like sort of watched what I thought for about a year. I would say maybe 8 months. And some of the biggest personal growth that I've had in my whole life was from that time, because I started thinking about the things that I was thinking about, and started not letting myself get away with thoughts that I thought were stupid and that didn't make any sense and were useless. All right, useless thoughts that I would have, thoughts about like feeling better than other people, right? And if you're smart, you have a lot of those, and you tell yourself you don't. You tell yourself you're in control of your thoughts, and you're not. You're really not. It's the truth. All right. So create the watcher. Start looking at yourself in the third person, right? Like the watcher is a third person view of a game. All right. When you're playing like if you're playing like Final Fantasy VII, all right, who are you? Who are you in the game? Are you Cloud? Or are you this sort of like God entity that like controls Cloud? Right? The reality is you're both. All right. You are Cloud. You are the actual physical body performing the actions, right? You have like the thoughts that occur to Cloud in the moment, right? Which are necessarily reactions to the world. But you're also, at the same time, simultaneously, you are this sort of watcher who is evaluating those reactions, all right, and deciding a more long-term course of action, all right. And what's interesting here, what's sort of very curious, is that this duality of mind has distinct goals, right? Cloud's goals and the watcher's goals are not necessarily perfectly aligned, right? They're not perfectly aligned. The watcher has specific things that it wants to do, which is like to evaluate whether or not a reaction is valid, to make sure that the thoughts we're having are moving us toward the goal that we want to have. Whereas Cloud is like, catching a ball as it comes at us, or, making sure to stay focused on exactly what's in front of us so that we can, have the best reaction time possible. If you can create this mental construct, you will be one of the few people in the whole world who is able to evaluate their own thoughts, and you will gain a massive benefit from being able to do that. If you have a goal to become a competitive player, then all thoughts should be evaluated as to whether they help you toward that goal or move you further away, and the watcher will help you do that. All right, the final point is quick and short and simple. And what I'll say is, if you're someone who's watched all of this and you are actually interested in becoming a competitive player, whatever arena it suits you, for one, I think a lot of these things that will make you successful are going to scale really well into the real world. A lot of this stuff is totally laterally applicable to the rest of your life. All right, these are essential, useful, practical outcomes and tools that you can use. But I will say that if you're looking to be successful, you know, if you want, if this is too hard, if you apply this stuff to like the real world and like a job, it's a lot fucking easier to do this and get a job that's high paying than it is to be like a competitive Super Smash Bros. Player. It's a lot easier. The competition is way less fierce on average. You know, because you don't need to be the best anymore. You just need to be good enough to like get a job, right? You'd find that sure, you know, what draws you. Use the Watcher. Why are you wanting to be a competitive gamer? What does that mean for you? It's probably ego, almost certainly. And that's okay. That's a fine place to start, right? Maybe your ego does. I'm not saying ego is bad. Don't get me wrong. You know, and I'm using ego in a very specific way. So I'm not saying necessary pride. Ego is identity, self-identity, right? Although it does mix with pride, right? So as the final secret point 6 is that if you really want to be, super successful, just apply these things to the real world and not competitive gaming, and you will find great success. Especially if you realize that you don't need to be the very best and you don't have anything to prove. Because one thing that comes out of the Watcher is you start to really question what you have to prove. What's the point of doing this, of suffering this way? And what am I getting out of it, right? What is the gain? You know, for some of us, the gain will be there. For a very, very, very small few of us, we'll be making money off of it. We'll be getting maybe even a little famous, maybe even infamous. But for most of us, we are going to fail, as I did. And the great thing is that the fallback plan is really, really good. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful. And let me know if you thought I missed anything or if you have any other thoughts. And best of luck. If you have any questions, just let me know. I really try to answer questions as a top priority in my videos. So let me know. See ya.